Brazil is holding a virtual meeting of BRICS leaders later on today, and on the agenda is President Trump's tariffs, but also a bid to rally other emerging markets nations to support multilateralism. Now, BRICS, of course, as we say, stands for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, and the group accounts for about 40% of the global economy and roughly half of its population. It's doubled in size in 2024 to include the likes of Iran, UAE, Ethiopia, and Egypt. Indonesia as well was also admitted earlier this year.
Yeah, and what does a larger BRICS mean for the world? And also just to also insert there, BRICS and SCO and, do those two things certainly overlap. There's one now supersede the other. In any case, as far as BRICS is concerned, the addition of major fossil fuel producers may then give the bloc more scope to challenge the dollar's dominance when it comes to, transactions for oil, gas, switching to other currencies, certainly a concept referred to as de-dollarization. Now, Beijing is also trying to build an alternative world order to challenge U.S. hegemony as a counter with a lot of fancy words here to the G7. In fact, Chinese President Xi Jinping is slated to address the virtual meeting today.
Yeah, for more, let's bring in Duke Kunshan University's American President and Executive Vice Chancellor John Quelch joining us here and flying into Hong Kong just in time. John, it was great to have you here on the program. Obviously, we've been talking about, this is coming off of a very, pageantry that we saw in Beijing, whether it was this SEO, the military parade, and now we're continuing this momentum for BRICS. What are you expecting is going to be kind of the tone and message coming through this kind of virtual meeting?
It's interesting that President Lula has called the virtual meeting because, of course, he and Brazil were not in Tianjin and not in Shanghai, whereas Modi of India was in Tianjin, skipped Shanghai, skipped Beijing, the victory parade, but was in Tianjin for the SCO meeting. So I think there's a little bit of a sense that Brazil does not want to be left out of the equation. The SCO is very much a Belt and Road Initiative, Northern Hemisphere grouping, whereas, of course, BRICS includes Brazil and South Africa. And I think it's important for Brazil in particular to be reasserting itself and reasserting the agenda items that it considers important. So that's why I think they've called the call.
Economically, are you seeing stronger ties? Between China and the likes of Brazil, for example, in terms of the U.S. pushing these guys all together?
Certainly in terms of agricultural commodities, Brazil has been in a sense, a godsend to China, with soybean sales having pretty much collapsed out of the U.S. and Brazil taking up the slack. And I think that has been reciprocated in terms of the level of trade interaction and investment interaction we see between China and Brazil. But Brazil has to be quite careful here in terms of balancing its outreach to China, but at the same time keeping a good relationship as much as it can with the United States. Though, of course, we currently have the Bolsonaro trial about to begin in Brazil, and
that's touchy.
Washington has made a few moves against the judges associated with the Brazilian Supreme Court in terms of visa restrictions, and that has not gone over very well in Brasilia.
How much further can we see a deepening of ties then within the BRICS when of course, we talk about the political divisions among the BRICS themselves?
Yes. So, to the extent that President Trump and Washington tariff policy is kind of inflaming emotional reaction on the part of the BRICS nations and the global South in general, that, of course, is giving them something to collaboratively fight against. Yeah. On the other hand, as you correctly point out, there are very, very many differences of opinion and divisions among the BRICS nations. Take India and China, for example. Despite a sort of 5-minute rapprochement in Tianjin, there is a long-standing difficulty between India and China.
So is it just optics, you think? Or do you think what we've seen in the last week or so is an inflection point in what China and Xi Jinping has wanted, is this shift in the global world order?
Well, I think President Xi and Beijing orchestrated the Tianjin event the SCO event, as well as the 80th anniversary event extremely well. And so to say it's an inflection point, I don't think is true, because frankly, real politics and real economics are going to come into play here. And there's a balancing act going on in every capital city of every BRICS or affiliated nation at the moment, where they have to try and cope with the U.S. situation, the level of indecision and flip-flopping that we occasionally see, versus at the same time the new reality of China's increasing importance in the global economy. So how to balance those two forces is something that every leader of every significant global South country is wrestling with.
And their business leaders, to your point, this eventually goes back to real economics, right? Businesses value predictability. I think at some point this morning we're getting the August trade numbers out of China. The reason I bring that up is I understand you were recently in one place in China that does specialize, Yiwu, which does specialize in making things basically for the world to purchase. And I remember covering that city, and it used to be known, I'm not sure if it still is, but you know, the Christmas capital of the world. That's where the gifts are mostly manufactured. What have you seen on the ground? Have businesses there shifted to BRICS, SCO, Belt and Road, whatever you want to call it, of course?
So Yiwu is totally different now from what you just described. It's way beyond Christmas ornaments. It's industrial products. It's robots. It's everything that you can imagine. Durable goods, consumables, trinkets, very small percentage now of the total throughput at Yiwu. Number two, around about 80,000 merchants in Yiwu, in the 7 trade centers that they have there. There are 10,000 foreign buyers resident in Yiwu, apart from 600,000 foreign visitors a year coming in.
Wow.
I talked to 6 or 7 merchants in Yiwu, small store owners in the marts, and what they told me was, as far as the U.S. is concerned, not really having much of an effect, the tariffs not having much of an effect on them, because, you know, a couple of years ago, these very agile merchants already pivoted to BRI, Belt and Road Initiative countries, Global South, other markets. And so the highest percentage that I could uncover among any of the merchants in terms of U.S. sales out of their particular operation was 10% still going to the U.S. And this was from a store which is essentially selling high-end product to higher-end product to the likes of Target and Disney.
I was going to get your take on what you're seeing in the higher education side of things. Duke Kunshan, of course, this is a joint venture between Duke University and Wuhan. What have you been seeing in terms of student enrollments, and maybe international sort of student interest?
So our enrollments this semester were very, very high, higher than we expected. We had a over-enrollment maybe around about 20% among international students accepting our offers ahead of what we expected. And this we attribute to the fact that Global South applicants who might have applied to the U.S. universities as well as to us ended up coming to us because of visa uncertainties, post-graduation employment uncertainties in the U.S., and the general climate of perhaps a less than safe environment for foreign students in the U.S. university campuses.
Do you get a sense that that's simply for this year? Is this an opportunity for the school to then be able to corner this part of the market that, you know, clearly has revisited this option and is now taking advantage of it?
Yeah, so obviously from our point of view, we're developing a truly international university. From our point of view, those students who have come to us this year are going to be the ambassadors for the next intake next year, and so we hope they'll all go back to their school counselors and their classmates 1 year behind and say, this is a great option, you should come to Duke Kunshan.